let's just sew whatever. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are making the Portland tote from Tote patterns. This is a fun, it looks crooked but I swear it's not, a fun little tote bag. It's super quick. There are no pattern pieces given in the sewing pattern, so keep that in mind. It's all ruler and cut. So it's a measurement, not pattern pieces. What I changed on the pattern is I went ahead and instead of cutting the largest piece that you then later on in the pattern cut apart to create this pocket, is I just made a notation of what sizes these pieces are and cut them that way. So that way if I wanted this to be a different fabric than this, etc., I could. And then instead of creating the back panel all solid, I just added 2 slip pockets so it's really large. I also omitted the zipper panel and just added a magnetic snap so that it's a super simple tote bag. Definitely beginner friendly, especially if you make it out of all quilting fabrics. I think it would be amazing to do. I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Let's get to sewing. I've made a handful of these. They are so easy and fun. The only thing that's a little bit confusing is the way the pattern is cut. It's similar to the Devon pouch where you cut a large piece and then you cut away from that. So if you're wanting to do accents of fabric, you'll want to subtract what you would cut away and create a new cut list. So just to give an example, it's one big square that you then cut 2 pieces off the side of, and then you have the back of a slip pocket. And now what I've decided to do is make it a slip pocket on the front and the back just to make a large tote with just a magnetic snap. So I won't be adding the zippered compartment or anything like that. It's just going to be a super quick large tote. I did like the idea of adding grab handles, so I cut out 2 handles that are 4 inches wide. Nope, 3 inches wide by 14 inches. And I just have 2 of those. So I'm going to go ahead and sew those together really quick, and then we will move on to the slip pocket that I'm placing on the front and back. So I'm not following the exact pattern directions. This is just kind of my interpretation. So for the handles, we're just going to fold the long raw edges in towards the center. And top stitch. I'm going to use a stitch length of about 4.5, and you only need to stitch the top, or the sides I should say, because the end of the handle is going to be sewn into the bag. And I am using Text 70 bonded nylon yellow thread with my shale clay vinyl. So this is a thicker one. I wouldn't say it's not domestic friendly, but I don't know that it's the most domestic friendly vinyl. But I will say that there shouldn't be any stick if you're using like a Teflon foot or something. There won't be any drag. There's no glossy texture. It's really matte and nice. Alright, so my handles are finished. I'm then going to grab my side panels, which I have 4 total, and my slip pockets, which I have 2 total. And this is a really big slip pocket, so if you wanted to, you could kind of dress it up and add a magnetic snap to it. You could make one into like a zippered slip pocket, so you could add a zipper to the front panel and then put right sides together. There's all kinds of ways you could make this fun and unique, which is one of the reasons I love patterns like this. They're very suggestive and simple so that you can have fun making it unique. And this is just a square. If you wanted to, you could cut this out of the same fabric and cut it to like 11 wide by 21 inches tall and just fold it in half and top stitch. But if you're using a directional print, then you would have your lining upside down, if that makes sense. So I've just sewn those top edges together. I'm going to press that down and top stitch. This is a fabric I designed so many years ago. But it is the characters from Bob's Burgers as cats. And I'm preparing for a Comic-Con, and I thought it would be hilarious to bring it back. So I am using waterproof canvas for the lining from FWD Fabrics. It's just a solid black. And then I'm using my own printed waterproof canvas. I don't sell this one. Amazon delivered something. Alright, and then we're going to grab the back of our slip pockets. So I have two of these because I cut it to the way I wanted to make it, not quite how the pattern says to. And I'm just going to line up the bottom edge of this pocket. And then I'm going to lay the side accent panel over top of that. You could add piping to this part if you wanted. That would look so cool. Or, of course, just kind of leave it as is. We do have to cut out the corners, and the measurement is given within the pattern for the cutout. The seam allowance is about 3/8 of an inch for everything. So you could see if you were batch sewing these, it would go so fast because it's just like piecing together, and you could do it in little batches. So now that I've got those side panels on, I'm going to open up that seam and top stitch along the edge of the vinyl, not on the pocket, which this creates some bulk. So if you have a domestic, you may want to be careful about what materials you use. It could skip stitches over that height difference where the pocket is located. And then if you want to add a nameplate, you could either add it to the front of the pocket, but I think I'm just going to add a woven label in the side seam of the bag. Because I don't intend on making this one a really fancy like handbag, but you absolutely can kind of dress it up or dress it down depending on the materials you use and the like closure options you go with. So there's that. So right now the bottom of the pocket is left open. You could absolutely baste that close if you wish. I'm going to go ahead and cut out my corners so that I don't forget to do that. So if you are a bag maker that's used to like traditional PDF patterns, it's so hard to say traditional because it just depends on which patterns you use most often, but this one is only a cut list. There are no pattern pieces. So if you're not a fan of that, you wouldn't like this pattern. I don't have a ton of their patterns, but I would say that most of their patterns are very likely just cutless, which sometimes I feel like it's refreshing. But if that's not your style, don't buy it, please. But I find these kinds of patterns to be like super, I feel like simple isn't the right word, but like they are simple. There's no fancy seam allowance to remember. There's no technique to have to learn. So they're a good like staple, I guess. And like when you're having a rough day and you just want to know that you know what you're doing, this is the kind of pattern I reach for when I'm having a rough day. Which is weird to say, but here we are. If you have a pattern that you keep going back to because you know it and you're confident in sewing it, I would love to know down below. Like, I would love to know that I'm not alone in that. Like, sometimes you just need an easy win. And I feel like this is going to be that bag for me. One of those bags. Like, cutting it out took no time at all, and then I have no interfacing at all on this. It definitely could benefit from some interfacing, even if it was just like the main panel the slip pocket is on. But again, I just wanted quick and easy. Here we go. I'm just pressing open that side seam and top stitching, and you can see there where we added the nameplate, or the woven label name tag. So I'm just measuring up the amount I need to cut off and then in the amount I need to cut off to finish off that square. And then you could even save that little cut out for zipper tabs or strap connectors, or to reinforce where you add your magnet. All right, I'm gonna find the center and add my straps. And I have actually opted to not add any zippers to this bag at all. The inside is just gonna be big open space minus the magnetic snap closure. And then I'm going to measure 2 inches from either side to add my little grab handles. And then I think I actually sewed them on 2 inches from the outside of the 2 inches. I'll show you what I mean. So I snipped my center, I added my 2-inch from either side, and then I'm laying it closest to the outer edge after that mark. And what you can do is kind of lay the strap down and see if you like that. So I like that distance a lot, but you may like that distance more. So it's up to you. So I'm going to lay it closest to the outer edge and just base that into place. And then again, I'm laying it closest to the outer edge, right next to the line. So hopefully that makes sense. And then just repeating on the other side. And I have my open edge. See how that edge has that seam and this one has nothing? I have this open edge towards the outside, facing the outermost edge. You could also add webbing handles. If you've made the Christie crossbody from Lynn's Handmade, you could do like faux rolled webbing handles, and that would be super cute. But now we're ready to just lay these together and sew around. The only issue with adding 2 slip pockets is the bulk at the bottom that it creates, especially with our accent connectors. You can see there's some bulk and there's the bulk. So it's up to you on how you'd want to remedy that. I'm not super worried about it. I think it's going to add some nice structure for this tote, which it is a fairly large tote. I think it would even be cute scaled down a little bit. And now to scale it down, you would just multiply the measurements by whatever you want to scale it down. So let's say, for instance, you want it to be 75% smaller. You would multiply, let's just say if something on this were 11 inches wide, you would multiply 11 by 0.75 to make it at 75%. So you would just multiply everything by that, and those are the measurements you would need. Because I think this would even be cute at like 12 inches wide or something. I don't know. Maybe I'll play with that. So I'm squaring the bottom now. And it's up to you whether you want to nest those seams or butterfly the seams. So I've laid it open on either side so it sits flat, but that could create bulk that your machine can't handle. So you could nest them by putting them in opposite directions so that the bulk isn't sitting right on top of itself. You've evenly distributed it. And I think that just kind of depends on your materials. Because this could absolutely be made out of all quilting cotton. You would just want to interface it with something like Sophie's Plus or something like that. Oh, another thing you could do is you could sew the bottom together, open it up, and top stitch that seam. That would be really cool. Lay this flat and top stitch. But yeah, that's the body of the tote done in like, what, 20 minutes? Well, my 20 minutes. I am adding D-ring connectors. I'm going to add a super quick webbing crossbody strap later on. So I feel like even if you don't sell a crossbody strap with the bag, it's not hard to add the hardware should someone want to purchase a crossbody strap later on. That's just my thinking. So I'm adding 3/4 inch D-rings, which means my connectors are cut to 1.5 inches wide, and then I have them 4 inches long. You could even do 3 inches if you wanted. And I'm going to top stitch these. And then slide the D-ring through. And I'm just adding a clip right there. I just had a peanut butter and jelly and I think the peanut butter is like stuck in my throat. I'm going to be adding a rivet up top so that the D-ring doesn't flop around. But now we're going to sew those in to the side of the bag. Something else you could do if you're worried about the bulk that adds is you could fold this this way so the raw ends are in the center and not seen, and you could sew that to the side of the bag, and then there's less bulk in the top seam. But I know my machine can handle it, so I'm good. I mean, it is a lot of bulk. You could even add this with webbing or a thinner accent fabric, just so long as you make sure it's nice and sturdy, because this bag could hold a lot of stuff. I can see it getting very heavy. All right, so I've got those clipped in place and I have them in the seam allowance about 1 inch. And I'm gonna baste them down, making sure they're lined up with the center. And basting it down also helps to kind of compress those layers later on. So that is the exterior of the tote completed. You can really see like just how big it is. I love it. So now I'm going to move on to the lining. Like I said, I'm not adding any pockets to the lining of this. I just wanted something so easy to make, because I will probably end up selling this for like maybe $50. I always like to have some simpler bags for someone who may not want a really fancy handbag that costs, I don't know, $120, that kind of a thing. So I'm cutting out my corners in the bottom. I just did all the layers at once, and then I'm going to add my magnetic snap. And when I am adding magnetic snaps to totes like this, where I'm like batch sewing a lot at once, y'all are probably going to be like, oh my gosh, no. But this is what I do. I will grab my seam ripper and my washer. I'm going to lay this in place wherever feels right, centered of course, and then I'm just going to stab through both pieces at the same time. And then I've got my little scrap pieces of vinyl that I'm going to back it with. So I'm going to stab holes there as well. And then I think I'm going to cut these down into little circles more or less, so that they're there to help reinforce, but they're not obviously squares of fabric just hanging out there. Might even be able to use like glue to help hold them in place, but oh, sorry. You could even use the peel and stick interfacing from Fabric Therapy. That would be cool too. So there's that. There's my vinyl. And there's my washer. And then repeating to the other side. I can easily see my holes. My snaps are going to line up. Click into place. There's my scrap of vinyl, my washer. So you can see how it's not so obvious and super quick. And then there is the top of the lining that I just need to sew in place. And this is where you could also add a recessed zipper panel. And on one of the bags, I even just added the zipper into the seam, but it makes it a really tight closure versus that zipper panel, which is going to allow for more things in the bag. I have not like batch sewed in what feels like forever. I used to just sit here, you all might probably know, for hours making like simple tote bags for my Comic-Cons and stuff like that. It was so satisfying. Okay, so then we're going to open that seam up and top stitch. And I am pulling on that seam and flattening because I want my lining to be facing up. So my seam is facing up and then I'm pressing down my accent vinyl. You could also flip it the other way if you'd prefer, or you could lay the seam open and top stitch in like a butterfly stitch. Not sure if that's the correct term or not, but it's what I call it. I am using these slim magnetic snaps so that it's a little less obtrusive, being such a large tote. We don't need this giant snap there. And then this bag is turned through the lining, so I want to make sure I leave an opening. And since I didn't leave a zippered pocket, I'm not going to be able to hide the top stitching of this opening. So just keep that in mind. If you're making this, if you don't want to see where you stitched, you can add that turn hole. What did you just call me? All right, and then I'm going to start at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm going to increase to about a half as I get down into the bottom. And then, like I said, we got to leave an opening. So I'm going to leave my needle in, pivot, and walk out of the lining. And then I'm going to walk back in. And this is just going to help hide where we started and stopped a little bit anyway. All right, so my seam allowance is still increased, and now I'm getting back towards the other side. So I'm going to switch back to a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And we can trim that away. And then open this up and square the bottom. And I'm not going to trim away any of my lining. It's not a very bulky lining. So I just don't feel like I need to. We did leave an opening, so I'm going to flip this. Oh my gosh, it's so fun. I do not need another tote, but I kind of want to keep it. Oh no. Okay. Make sure your handles are inside the tote, and then we'll lay the lining right sides together inside of your exterior. Your lining is always meant to be a little bit smaller, so I find it easier if the exterior is wrong side out. Make sure that your hardware is pointing in, and then line up your side seams. And then I'm just clipping all the main points. Lining up there. And at this point, if your lining is too saggy or bulky, you can make adjustments to your seam allowances. And I'll kind of get my hands inside the bag to make sure those layers are sitting nicely together. You can always snip your centers for your lining and your exterior and line those up as well so that you've got those in place. And the shale clay, the whole clay line, they are a bit stretchy. So just keep that in mind as you're sewing. There may be some stretch. But like, it's not a bad stretch. It's just like a, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's nice. I like it. So I'm seeing here that I did not line up the center snip, or yeah, with my lining and exterior, so I've done that now. And then I'm just gonna re-clip. Things seem to sit well, so now I can sew these together. And this again is like a 3/8 inch. If you want to bump it up to about a half, you have the leeway to do so. And then just be mindful of the bulk on your handles and your crossbody strap connector. I'm not going to show you how to sew a crossbody strap in this video, but it is very simple, especially when you're just using webbing. It could be super quick. Bobbin got me. I had like half an inch left. Dang it. I'll use red. That'll be fun. It's like ketchup and mustard. I really thought this would be a 1 bobbin tote. I was wrong. Alright, and then we're going to turn the bag. So what I do is I will pull my lining completely away from the exterior, and I will grab the bottom of my exterior first. And get that through. And because we walked in and out of the lining at that turn hole, if those stitches kind of start to come undone, you're not going to see it at that closure. So make sure you press out your bottom corners, check your seams for any skipped or missed stitches. Make sure everything looks good. And then I'm going to burp the bag. Get all that air out. I'll press against the lining as well, because now's the time if there's any issues to fix it. I'm just going to fold the lining closed on itself. And you can just see how clean that looks because we walked in and out of the lining. I want to add a woven label. What do I have that would be funny? I'll just do I'm handcrafted, take care of me. Oh no, Rickroll. Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, never gonna run around and hurt you. Okay. And then we're going to stick that back into the bag. And that little lip of accent fabric that we sewed onto the lining does get folded into the lining. So we're going to roll the seam and top stitch. And then I'm going to add a rivet to my strap connector. You see how much extra we have? I just think it looks bad with that being wobbly like that. And you can sew it closer into your seam, but I always like to have a little leeway because I think adding a rivet just gives a little fanciful touch, especially to a bag with such minimal hardware. So I thought that I had cut this out with black lining, but I'm really glad that I used the exterior fabric as well. I just think it's so bright and fun. Now before I top stitch, I'm going to press the lining into place, make sure everything sits nicely, test out the magnet, see how things look. And you can see just with those fabrics, like it has a decent amount of structure, but still slouchy as well. And it's got these just huge slip pockets. And again, you could always add a zippered pocket here. You could even make this a zippered pocket. That would be super fun. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and top stitch. I've got the ketchup and mustard vibes. I love it. And now sewing over these connectors, because it is such a big difference, I'm going to fold this like scrap of canvas to help me lift up the foot to meet where I need to be. You can just keep it right under the foot and go slow. And then remember, you got to come back down as well, and you're going to need help with that height difference. So I'm going to put this in front of the foot as well. Or you can even just put it on the side, because you have to be careful you're not sewing through that. And then all the other height differences aren't as big of a deal for this machine anyway. And be careful if you have a rough foot on your sewing machine that your vinyl doesn't scrape the finish, that your foot doesn't scrape the finish of the vinyl. Silly. All right, we're getting towards the other side. If you need to, you can also use the glass breaking tool, the key fob clamps. To compress those layers. Another thing you could consider is just top stitching to that connector and then not top stitching the rest of the way. And that is the tote bag finished. I'm just pulling my threads to the back. Oh my gosh, so fun. So this is just a fairly quick bag to make, super large. This would be a fun, like I said, it's just a fun, easy sew. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know if you would make this bag, what changes you would make to the bag, like what would you want to see in a slip pocket, or I don't know, what would you do? It's your blank canvas. What are you going to do? Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you all later. Bye.